Meet James Harrison Sr., a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran who walked into Manhattan's most exclusive boutique wearing his old jacket and worn boots. The store's staff took one look at him and immediately asked him to leave. They mocked his appearance, sneered at his modest clothes, and even called security to escort him out. What they didn't know was that their cruel actions would soon come back to haunt them, because exactly 1 hour later, a black Mercedes SUV pulled up outside the boutique. The person stepping out wasn't just any wealthy customer, it was James Harrison Jr., the billionaire CEO who owned the entire fashion empire. But what happened next would shock everyone in that store. What would a billionaire son do when he discovers his veteran father was humiliated in his own boutique? Dawn broke over Manhattan with military precision, just as James Harrison Sr. opened his eyes. 5:30 a.m., the same time he'd risen for the past 50 years, whether in the jungles of Vietnam or the quiet comfort of his modest Upper West. Side apartment. His weathered hands, strong despite the years, smoothed the corners of his bed with practiced efficiency. Some habits never fade. The old family photo album sat where it always did, on the small table beside his late wife's reading chair. Mary had kept it meticulously organized until the day cancer took her 5 years ago. James Sr. ran his fingers over its worn leather cover, the morning light catching the tarnished corners that had witnessed a lifetime of memories. Inside, the first photo never failed to catch his breath. Him in his dress uniform, Mary radiant. In her white dress, both of them impossibly young and full of hope. Their wedding day, just 3 weeks before his second tour. He'd carried that image in his heart through the darkest days in Vietnam. Next came the pictures of young James Jr., first as a tow-headed toddler clutching his father's leg during rare leaves, then as a serious-eyed boy holding up school awards. Mary had documented everything while James Sr. was deployed. First steps, first words, first days of school, sending the photos in carefully wrapped packages to wherever the army had stationed him. "Good morning, my love," he whispered to Mary's portrait on the bedside table, another daily ritual that anchored his mornings. She smiled back at him through the silver frame, her eyes still twinkling with the same warmth that had sustained him through 3 tours of duty. James Sr. moved through his morning routine with the same disciplined care he'd learned in the service. Shower, precisely 5 minutes, shave with careful strokes, press his clothes with military corners. His fingers briefly brushed the purple. Heart medal in his drawer, a reminder of both honor and loss, before selecting his familiar olive jacket, the one Mary had given him their last Christmas together. Today was special. His granddaughter Emma was turning 16, and he wanted to get her something nice. James Jr. had offered to handle it, of course. His son could buy out entire department stores without blinking now, but James Sr. wanted to choose something himself, something with meaning. He'd seen a delicate vintage locket in the window of that fancy boutique on 5th Avenue, Billionaire fashion house. It reminded him of one Mary used to wear. His pension check had come in, and he'd been saving. The price in the window had made him wince, but Emma was worth it. She had Mary's eyes and that same gentle spirit. Besides, he'd learned long ago that some things meant more than money. As he adjusted his tie, military straight, in the mirror, James Sr. squared his shoulders. He might not look like their usual customer, but he had as much right as anyone to walk into that store. His son might be a billionaire now, but James Sr. had never asked for help with his own expenses. Pride and independence were lessons he'd learned young and taught by example. "Wish me luck, Mary," he said softly to the empty apartment. For a moment he could almost hear her laughing response. "You've faced down enemy fire, my love. What's a fancy store compared to that?" With one last look at the photo album, his family's history held in those pages, James Sr. picked up his worn leather wallet and headed out. The morning doorman, Tony, snapped to attention as he passed. The young man's father had served in Desert Storm, and he never failed to show respect to a fellow veteran. The autumn air held a crisp promise. As James Sr. made his way down the busy Manhattan sidewalk, his steps were sure and measured, markers of a man who had spent his life standing tall through whatever challenges life presented. Little did he know that this morning's mission to find the perfect gift would set in motion events that would remind everyone, including his own son, that true worth couldn't be measured by the price tags in a fancy boutique. The security cameras at Lumineux Fashion House captured every moment of what happened next. Their silent digital eyes recorded James Sr. as he approached the gleaming glass doors, his reflection mixing with the carefully curated luxury displays behind the windows. A young security guard, more focused on his phone than his duties, barely glanced up as the veteran entered. The boutique's interior was a symphony of subtle lighting and minimalist design. Price tags were deliberately small, operating on the old principle that if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. The air was perfumed with an exclusive fragrance that probably cost more per ounce than James Sr.'s monthly pension. A cluster of well-dressed shoppers parted like water around him. Designer bags clutched a little tighter, carefully made-up faces trying not to stare at his worn olive jacket. The same jacket that had kept him warm during countless evening watches over his unit, though none of them would have known or cared about that. Behind the main counter, two saleswomen in identical black dresses whispered to each other, their eyes darting between James Sr. and their pristine displays. One, wearing a name tag that read Victoria, finally approached with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "Sir," she said, emphasizing the word in a way that made it clear she'd rather use something else. "Can I help you find the exit? I believe you may have wandered into the wrong establishment." James Sr. stood straighter, his military bearing automatic. "No, ma'am. I'm here to look at the locket in the window display. It's for my granddaughter's 16th birthday." Victoria's perfectly penciled eyebrows arched. "The vintage Cartier piece? That's $38,000. She paused, letting the number hang in the air like a barrier. "Perhaps I could direct you to some more suitable establishments." "I'm aware of the price," James Sr. replied quietly, dignity in every syllable. "I've been saving for it." The second saleswoman had already picked up the phone, her manicured fingers discreetly dialing security. The security cameras caught her mouthing "potential situation" into the receiver. A well-dressed couple nearby had stopped browsing to watch the scene unfold, the woman hiding her smirk behind a designer clutch. The security guard who had been at the door was now moving closer, hand resting meaningfully on his radio. "Sir," Victoria said, her voice rising to carry across the store, "we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who doesn't meet our establishment's standards. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." James Sr.'s face remained composed, though his hands, the ones that had once carried wounded comrades to safety under heavy fire, tightened slightly at his sides. "I'm a paying customer, ma'am. I have every right to be here." "Security!" Victoria called, not even bothering to lower her voice. "Please escort this person out. He's disturbing our other customers." The young guard grabbed James Sr.'s arm roughly. The veteran didn't resist, but he didn't hurry either, maintaining his dignity as he was led toward the door. The security camera caught every detail, the contemptuous expressions of the staff, the amused glances of other shoppers, the way James Sr.'s shoulders stayed straight despite the humiliation. Just before he was pushed through the doors, James Sr. paused. "My son shops here often," he said quietly. "He would be disappointed to see this." "Of course he does," Victoria laughed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm sure he buys out half the store. Now please, leave before we're forced to call the police." The final frame from the security footage showed James Sr. standing alone on the sidewalk, his reflection fractured in the gleaming windows of the boutique. What the cameras didn't capture was the small, sad smile on his face, one that spoke of a man who had faced far worse than the petty cruelties of luxury store employees. What happened in those next 60 minutes would be replayed on social media millions of times. The security footage would become evidence of a moment when wealth and status collided with values and respect. Though none of the boutique staff knew that yet, they were still congratulating themselves on maintaining their store's standards, unaware that they had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. James Harrison Jr.'s smartwatch vibrated during the most important board meeting of the quarter. Normally, he wouldn't have glanced at it. The merger discussion demanded his full attention, but something made him look down. A notification from his chief of social media. Urgent, viral video at Lumineux flagship store. Your father involved. His father. The words didn't make sense at first. His dad never made waves, never sought attention. The same man who had refused to move out of his modest apartment even after James had become a billionaire, saying, "Son, wealth doesn't change who you are, it reveals it." "Excuse me," James said, rising from the mahogany conference table where 12 board members sat reviewing acquisition projections. "There's a family matter I need to address." His tone left. No room for discussion, even from people who controlled billions in company shares. In his private office, he pulled up the video on his phone. The security footage was crisp, clinical in its documentation of his father's humiliation. Each frame felt like a physical blow. When Victoria's voice dripped with contempt, "I'm sure he buys out half the store." James's hand tightened around his phone until his knuckles went white. A memory surfaced, himself at 10 years old, watching his father polish his dress shoes before dawn. "Why so early, Dad?" he'd asked. "Because how you present yourself matters, son," his father had answered. "Not for vanity, but for respect. Self-respect first, then others will follow." The video was approaching 1 million views. Comments flooded in. "Disgusting treatment. Who do these people think they are? This is how they treat a veteran?" Celebrities were already sharing it, calling for boycotts. James's executive assistant appeared in the doorway. "Sir, PR is asking how to respond. The video's going viral faster than anything we've seen." "Tell them to wait," James said quietly. His watch showed another notification. Stock prices already. Responding to the social media storm, he dismissed it with a swipe. Some things mattered more than market fluctuations. He pressed a button on his desk. "Get my car ready." Another button. "Cancel all appointments for the next 2 hours." A final call. "Dad, are you home?" "No, don't apologize. You did nothing wrong. Stay there, I'm coming to get you." The smart watch continued buzzing with notifications as he strode through the office. Board members tried to intercept him with questions about the merger, but his expression kept them at bay. In the elevator, he watched the video again, noting every face, every smirk, every moment of casual cruelty. His father had taught him something else long ago. After a schoolyard bully had torn up James's prized comic book, he'd wanted revenge. His father had sat him down and said, "The measure of a man isn't in how he punishes his enemies, son. It's in how he rights wrongs and lifts others up." The sleek black Mercedes SUV was waiting at the curb. As his driver held the door, James checked his watch one last time. The video had passed 2 million views. His company's stock was down 3 points. None of that mattered. What mattered was the quiet dignity in his father's straight shoulders. As he was escorted out, what mattered was that somewhere in that boutique people were still congratulating themselves on maintaining their standards while disrespecting a man who had risked his life for their freedom to be so casually cruel. "Where to, Mr. Harrison?" his driver asked. "Home first, to pick up my father," James said, his voice level but charged with purpose. "Then to Lumineux Fashion House. It's time for a lesson in real standards." His watch buzzed again. Someone had identified his father, made the connection to James Harrison Jr., CEO of Harrison Luxury Brands. The internet was catching fire with the revelation. But James wasn't thinking about that, or about the merger, or about the millions being lost in market value with each passing minute. He was thinking about shoe polish before dawn, about self-respect, and about righting wrongs. His father had taught him well. Now it was time to put those lessons into practice. The latest issue of Fortune magazine lay untouched on James Jr.'s desk, his own image staring back at him from the cover. James Harrison Jr., the fashion empire's hidden giant, blazed across. The glossy surface. The photographer had captured him in his signature pose, steel grey suit, hands clasped, slight smile, the picture of corporate success. But it was the old photo they'd used in the article that caught his eye as the car wound through Manhattan's streets. Him, at 18, standing proudly in front of his father's small tailor shop in Queens. James Sr. had worked there after retiring from the military, doing alterations and repairs with the same precision he'd brought to everything in life. "Your hands tell your story," his father had always said, measuring and marking with careful strokes. "Make sure they tell one of quality and care." James Jr. had swept floors there after school, watching his father turn fallen hems and frayed cuffs into proud garments again. The magazine article told a different story. Young entrepreneur strikes gold in luxury retail. Self-made billionaire. Transforms fashion industry. Serial acquisitions create unprecedented empire. All true, but missing the foundation beneath the gloss. They didn't mention the military pension his father had spent on his first semester of business school, or the way James Sr. had taught him about fabric and fit between customers, lessons that would later help him spot quality at a glance. The article celebrated his innovative approach to luxury retail, but didn't know about the nights his father spent teaching him that true luxury wasn't about price tags. It was about dignity, craftsmanship, and respect. The Mercedes passed the site of that old shop, now a sleek coffee chain. James Jr. had offered to buy the building when he made his first million to preserve it, but his father had shaken his head. "The past is a foundation, son, not a fortress. Build forward." And build he had. Harrison Luxury Brands now owned 37 high-end fashion houses, including Lumineux. The magazine praised his hands-off management style, letting each brand maintain its identity. Today would be a rare exception. His phone buzzed with another update. The video had reached 5 million views. Celebrities were cancelling partnerships with Lumineux. Fashion blogs were running exclusive pieces about the billionaire CEO's veteran father. His PR team had sent 3 proposed statements, each crafted to minimize damage. They didn't understand. This wasn't about damage control. The car pulled up outside his father's building. The doorman, Tony, snapped to attention, not for the billion-dollar empire, but for the respect James Sr. had earned through years of quiet dignity. That was the real story the magazine had missed. James Jr. adjusted his tie, another habit learned from his father. The magazine had asked him about his success secrets. He'd given them the usual answers about market innovation and strategic growth. But the real secret was simpler. Every morning he still heard his father's voice. "Your hands tell your story. Make sure it's one you're proud to tell." Today, those hands would write a new chapter. Not for the magazine covers or the viral videos, but for the man who had taught him the true meaning of value. As he stepped out of the car, James Jr. smiled, thinking of the boutique staff who had judged his father by his worn jacket. They were about to learn what the magazine article had missed. Behind the empire of luxury brands stood the unfailing lessons of a veteran father who understood that true quality had nothing to do with price tags. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The black Mercedes SUV pulled up to Lumineux Fashion House precisely 1 hour after James Sr. had been escorted out. Through the boutique's pristine windows, Victoria was still at her post, attending to a customer draped in designer labels. The security guard stood at attention now, clearly having received urgent messages about the viral video and its implications. James Jr. adjusted his Savile Row suit, another lesson from his father about the power of proper fit, and reached for the leather portfolio in his briefcase. Inside lay the boutique's ownership documents, transferred to Harrison Luxury Brands during last year's acquisition. He had never visited this location personally, preferring to let his brands operate independently. That policy was about to change. "Wait here," he told his father, who sat quietly in the car's leather interior. "I want to handle this first." James Sr. nodded, understanding in his eyes. Some battles a son needed to fight alone. The boutique's door chimed softly as James Jr. entered. The same perfumed air, the same carefully curated displays his father had passed. Victoria looked up, customer service smile already in place, then froze. Unlike his father, she recognized him instantly. Everyone in luxury fashion knew James Harrison Jr.'s face. "Mr. Harrison," she stammered, color draining from her perfectly made-up face. "We had no idea you were coming today. I would have prepared the ownership documents, please." His voice was quiet, but carried across the suddenly silent store. "The ones that show Harrison Luxury Brands' acquisition of Lumineux Fashion House. They should be in your store files." Victoria's hands shook as she accessed the store's digital system. Other staff members had emerged from back rooms, drawn by the tension in the air. The security guard who had escorted James Sr. out was trying to make himself invisible behind a display of handbags. "Here, sir," Victoria said, pulling up the documents on a tablet. Her finger trembled as she held it out. James Jr. didn't take it. Instead, he opened his portfolio and withdrew his own copy. "Article 7, Section 3, he read aloud. "All Lumineux Fashion House properties operate under the direct authority of Harrison Luxury Brands, with full oversight and intervention rights reserved for the parent company's executive board." He looked up, meeting Victoria's eyes. "Do you know what that means, practically speaking?" She shook her head, mascara-rimmed eyes wide with growing comprehension. "It means that when you humiliated a veteran this morning, when you mocked his clothes and called security to remove him, you weren't just showing contempt for a man who served his country. You were treating the father of your company's owner like a trespasser in his own house." The silence in the store was absolute now. Even the soft music had seemed to fade away. "But sir," Victoria managed, "we have standards to maintain." "The store's image? Standards?" James Jr. cut her off, his voice still measured but carrying an edge of steel. "Let's talk about standards. The man you threw out can field strip and reassemble a rifle blindfolded. He earned a Purple Heart pulling 3 men to safety under enemy fire. He raised a son alone while working 2 jobs, spent his evenings doing alterations to pay for that son's education, and never once complained about the sacrifice." He stepped closer to the counter, placing the ownership documents down with deliberate care. "Those are standards, Victoria. That's the kind of quality you failed to recognize because you were too busy judging his jacket." The other employees had gathered in a tight cluster, watching their world reshape itself. The well-dressed customers who had smirked at James Sr. earlier were suddenly very interested in their phones. "Mr. Harrison," the store manager appeared, clutching another tablet. "We can explain." "No need," James Jr. interrupted. "Instead, I want you to look outside. See that man in the Mercedes, the one you thought wasn't good enough for your precious boutique? He's about to give you a lesson in true class." James Jr. walked to the door, opened it, and beckoned to his father. James Sr. stepped out of the car, straight-backed and dignified as ever. Like his son, he understood the power of a proper entrance. As father and son stood framed in the doorway together, the contrast was striking. One in a custom suit that cost more than a car, the other in his worn olive jacket that had weathered war and time. But they shared the same bearing, the same quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who they were. "Now," James Jr. said, his hand on his father's shoulder, "let's talk about some changes to your standards." The boutique's staff stood frozen as James Sr. moved through the space that had rejected him an hour before. His son's presence had transformed the air itself. The same custom fragrance now seemed to carry a different weight. As he passed a mirror, James Sr. caught sight of them together, the billionaire CEO and the veteran in his worn jacket. Different paths, same bearing. "You didn't have to do this, son," he said quietly, reaching into his back pocket for his worn leather wallet. The gesture was automatic, something he did when nervous or thoughtful. Inside, carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve, was a faded crayon drawing, a child's version of a superhero, complete with cape and medals. "Of course I did," James Jr. replied, recognizing the wallet and its precious cargo. He'd drawn that picture at age 6, right before his father's 3rd tour. "My hero wears an olive jacket," he declared then, coloring the figure in his father's familiar green. Victoria and the other staff members watched this intimate moment unfold, their earlier contempt curdling into shame. The security guard who had manhandled James Sr. couldn't meet anyone's eyes. "Remember what you told me when I made this?" James Jr. asked, gesturing to the drawing his father now held. The paper had yellowed, but the crayon marks remained bright, preserved by decades of careful handling. "A hero isn't about the medals," James Sr. quoted himself, smiling slightly. "It's about standing tall and doing right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard," James Jr. added. He turned to address the store staff, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. "My father has carried this drawing in his wallet for 30 years, through war, through loss, through every hard day and proud moment. Not because it's valuable by your standards, but because it matters by his." James Sr. tried to deflect the attention, modest as always. "I came in for Emma's birthday gift," he explained. "The locket in the window. It reminded me of her grandmother's." James Jr.'s expression softened at the mention of his daughter, named for his mother. "The vintage Cartier piece." $38,000, Victoria offered weakly, then immediately wished she hadn't spoken as both men turned to look at her. "I've been saving," James Sr. said, reaching for his wallet again, this time for the carefully counted bills inside. 6 months of planning. James Jr. felt something in his chest tighten. His father, living on a military pension, had been setting aside money for months while he, the billionaire son, could buy the entire store's inventory without blinking. "Dad," he said softly, "let me—" "No." James Sr.'s voice was gentle but firm. "I want to do this myself, for Emma, for her grandmother." The same pride that had kept him in his modest apartment, that had him pressing his clothes each morning with military precision, that had him standing tall even when being escorted out by security. It was all there in his voice. James Jr. nodded, understanding. Then he turned to Victoria, who still stood behind the counter. "The locket, please. The one in the window. My father would like to make a purchase." She hurried to comply, handling the vintage piece with trembling hands. The price tag that had seemed so definitive an hour ago now felt like an indictment of their own values. As James Sr. carefully counted out the bills, month after month of savings laid out with quiet dignity, his son watched the staff's faces. They were seeing it now. The care in those weathered hands, the pride in that straight spine, the wealth that had nothing to do with money. "Would you like it gift-wrapped?" Victoria asked, her voice small. "Yes, please," James Sr. replied with the same courtesy he'd shown earlier, despite everything. As she carefully wrapped the locket, he tucked the old wallet back into his pocket, the child's drawing safely stored away. Father and son stood together, surrounded by luxury, but focused only on what mattered: a grandfather's love, a son's respect, a child's drawing preserved through decades. The boutique's pristine interior had witnessed many transactions, but none quite like this, where true value was measured not in dollars, but in dignity. "Emma's going to love it," James Jr. said, watching his father accept the carefully wrapped package. "She reminds me so much of your mother," James Sr. replied softly. Then, with the hint of a smile, "though I hope she has better taste in jackets." The moment of gentle humor broke the tension, reminding them both that sometimes the best victory was simply standing tall, together. The store's policy manual lay open on the gleaming counter, its pristine pages about to undergo their first major revision in Lumineux's 15-year history. James Jr. had called an immediate all-hands meeting, and the entire staff stood in a nervous semicircle as he flipped through the document. "Page 1, he began, his voice carrying through the now-closed boutique. "Our mission statement claims unparalleled excellence in customer service. Tell me, is that what my father received today?" The staff shifted uncomfortably. Victoria stared at her designer shoes, their red soles suddenly seeming less important than they had that morning. "I'm going to tell you a story about service," James Jr. continued, his father quiet but attentive at his side. "When I was 10, I watched my father alter a suit for a young man who could barely afford it. The suit was for his first job interview. Dad stayed late, worked through dinner, and charged him half price. That man now runs a tech company in Silicon Valley." He turned to a new page in the manual. "Our current policies focus on appearance, on status, on who belongs in a luxury space. Today, we're rewriting them. First change, every veteran who walks through these doors will be treated with the respect they've earned." The store manager raised her hand tentatively. "Mr. Harrison, while we completely agree with the sentiment, how will we verify?" "You won't," James Sr. spoke up for the first time. "You'll treat everyone with respect because that's what decent people do." James Jr. nodded, pride evident in his expression. "Exactly, which brings us to change number 2. He pulled out his phone, quickly typing, "I'm authorizing a company-wide discount for all veterans and their families, effective immediately." The manager's eyes widened. "But sir, our profit margins will be fine," James Jr. cut in. "Because here's what you don't understand about luxury. It's not about excluding people. It's about creating something of genuine value and making it accessible to those who truly appreciate it." He gestured around the boutique. "Look at these displays. Everything here is crafted with precision, care, and attention to detail. Just like how my father taught me to fold pocket squares, or how he pressed his uniform every morning during his service. That's real luxury, the dedication to doing things right." Victoria, finding her voice, stepped forward. "Mr. Harrison, I want to apologize." "Instead of apologizing," James Jr. interrupted, "learn, change, grow. Starting tomorrow, every employee will undergo new training, not just in product knowledge, but in human dignity. And to make sure we never forget today's lesson." He turned to the final page of the policy manual, writing in clear, firm strokes. "The Harrison Standard. We judge not by the jacket one wears, but by the person wearing it." James Sr. watched his son write, remembering countless evenings helping with homework at their small kitchen table. Now that same careful hand was reshaping an entire company's values. "Additionally," James Jr. continued, "each store will partner with local veterans organizations. We'll provide job training, employment opportunities, and support for military families. The details will be in your updated manual tomorrow." The staff listened, their earlier fear gradually shifting to understanding. The security guard who had escorted James Sr. out stepped forward, removing his badge. "Sir, I should resign." "No," James Sr. interjected. "You should learn and do better. That's what soldiers do. We adapt, we improve, we move forward." James Jr. smiled at his father's words, "Which brings us to our final change." He pulled out another document, architectural plans. "We're renovating the entrance. The new doors will bear a plaque, 'All who serve are welcome here.'" The transformation was happening not just on paper, but in the very air of the boutique. Staff members began sharing ideas for implementing the new policies. The manager started drafting plans for veterans events. Victoria asked James Sr. about his service, listening with genuine interest to his measured responses. As father and son watched the change unfold, James Jr. leaned close to his father. "Think we made our point?" James Sr. adjusted his olive jacket, the same one that had drawn such scorn hours earlier. "You did good, son. Your mother would be proud." The policy manual sat open on the counter, its pages reflecting the boutique's bright lights. By tomorrow, it would contain new words, new rules, new values. But the most important change had already occurred, in the hearts and minds of those who had learned that true luxury begins with respect. By sunset, the original video had exploded across every social media platform. The viral post that started, "It all was simple enough. Watch how this luxury store treats a veteran, then wait for his billionaire son's response. Respect our veterans, justice served." The morning security footage had been edited into a compelling narrative, set to stirring music. It opened with James Sr.'s dignified entrance, showed his humiliation, then cut dramatically to the arrival of the black Mercedes and James Jr.'s intervention. The internet had found its story of the day. James Sr. watched the growing media frenzy from his apartment, shaking his head at the mounting view counts. All this attention over an old man in a jacket, he mused, sipping his evening coffee. His son, still at his side, was monitoring the situation on his phone. Celebrity after celebrity was sharing the story. Veterans groups were organizing solidarity. Visits to luminous boutiques nationwide. Competing luxury brands were rushing to announce their own veterans programs. Billionaire CEO teaches luxury store a lesson in respect, screamed one headline. Fashion empire heir stands up for veteran. Father, declared another. Harrison luxury brand stock soars after viral veterans' rights stand, reported the Financial News. The comment sections overflowed with personal stories. My dad's a Vietnam vet too. This brought tears to my eyes. Finally, someone standing up for what's right. This is how you use privilege and power for good. James Jr.'s phone buzzed constantly with messages from other business leaders, many suddenly discovering their own commitment to veterans' causes. His PR team had given up trying to control the narrative. The story had taken on a life of its own. Dad, he said, showing him one particularly touching message from a military family. You've started something here. James Sr. adjusted his reading glasses to look at the screen. A young woman had posted a photo of her grandfather, also a Vietnam veteran, wearing a similar olive jacket. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, she wrote, for showing that our veterans deserve respect, not judgment. The social media storm was reshaping itself into a movement. As Harrison's standard was trending, with people sharing stories of quiet dignity in the face of prejudice. The original video had spawned dozens of remixes, each emphasizing different aspects. The father's composure, the son's intervention, the staff's transformation from arrogance to understanding. Even the meme community had embraced the story. Pictures of James Sr.'s olive jacket were being photoshopped onto luxury fashion models. Highest quality, made with honor, read one viral image. James Jr.'s corporate communications team had finally managed to craft a statement that captured the moment without seeming opportunistic. At Harrison Luxury Brands, we believe true value lies not in what you wear, but in who you are and what you stand for. Today we stand with all who serve. The boutique's security footage had been viewed more times than the latest Hollywood blockbuster. Marketing experts were already analyzing it as a masterclass in authentic brand messaging. Business schools were preparing case studies on crisis management and social responsibility. But amid the digital storm, father and son sat quietly in the apartment that hadn't changed with fortune. The viral post that had started it all still played on James Jr.'s phone, its message spreading across the globe. Your mother, James Sr. said suddenly, she always said you'd do something important with your success. James Jr. looked at his father, this man who had taught him everything that mattered about true worth. Pretty sure this wasn't what she had in mind. No, James Sr. smiled. This is exactly what she had in mind, using your position to stand up for what's right. Though, he added with a twinkle in his eye, she might have handled it with a bit less drama. The hashtags continued to multiply, the story continued to spread, but its real impact wasn't in the viral metrics or soaring stock prices. It was in the quiet revolution of respect it had sparked, in the thousands of people remembering to look past appearances to see the dignity within. As night fell over Manhattan, the story that had begun with a worn olive jacket was still gaining momentum, reminding everyone that sometimes the most powerful statements come not from trending topics, but from standing up for what you believe in. The corporate memo went out to all 37 Harrison Luxury Brands companies at exactly 9 a.m. the next morning. Its header was simple but powerful. Introducing the Harrison Veterans Initiative, more than a program, a promise. James Jr. had spent the night drafting it with his father's input, revising each point until it reflected not just corporate policy, but genuine commitment to change. The memo's opening paragraph set the tone. Yesterday, we witnessed how easy it is to forget that luxury isn't about exclusion, it's about excellence. Excellence in craft, in service, and most importantly, in recognizing the dignity of every person who walks through our doors. Today, we're making a commitment that will redefine what luxury means across our entire organization. The initiative was comprehensive. Every Harrison brand would implement immediate changes, priority hiring for veterans and military families, specialized training programs in luxury retail and fashion design, partnerships with veterans organizations. For mentorship and support, a dedicated percentage of profits directed to military family support services. Monthly, service Saturday events honoring local veterans. James Sr. sat in his son's office as the responses began flooding in. Regional managers, store directors, and brand executives all pledging immediate support. The cynical might have called it damage control, but the depth of the program spoke to something more genuine. "Look at this one, Dad," James Jr. said, showing him an email from a store manager in Texas. Her father served in Desert Storm. She's already organized a local veterans group to start training next week. The memo had sparked more than just corporate compliance. Stories were emerging from across the company. Employees sharing their own connections to military service, stores discovering veterans already on their staff, managers proposing additional initiatives. Lumineux's transformation was becoming the template. Victoria, still processing her role in the incident, had volunteered to head the training program. "We need to do more than just apologize," she'd written in her proposal. "We need to change how we see people." The security guard who had escorted James Sr. out was now helping develop security training protocols that emphasized respect and dignity. His own brother, it turned out, was serving overseas. James Sr. reviewed each new addition to the program carefully, drawing on his military experience to ensure it would make a real difference. "The key," he explained to his son, "is sustainability. This can't just be a reaction to one incident," and it wasn't. The memo detailed 5-year plans, dedicated budgets, and concrete metrics for success. But more importantly, it captured the spirit of what had happened in that boutique, the moment when luxury met reality and reality won. Harrison Luxury Brands has always stood for quality, the memo concluded. Today, we expand that definition to include the quality of character that our service members demonstrate every day. The Harrison standard isn't just about how we treat veterans, it's about how we treat everyone. As father and son reviewed the responses together, James Sr. shared stories from his own service, the bonds formed, the lessons learned, the dignity that had carried them through the darkest days. Each story shaped and strengthened the initiative. The corporate world was taking notice. Other luxury groups were reaching out, asking to partner or replicate the program. Business publications were praising it as a model of corporate social responsibility. But in James Jr.'s office, the focus remained personal. "You know," James Sr. said, reading through the memo one more time, "your mother would have loved this. Part about the design internships for military spouses." James Jr. smiled, remembering how his mother had always found ways to help military families in their neighborhood. She always saw the potential in people. The memo that had started as a response to a viral incident was becoming a blueprint for change. But its real power lay not in its policies or programs, but in the simple truth it represented, that true luxury is measured not in the price of what you wear, but in the worth of how you treat others. The press release from Mondial Luxe, Harrison's largest competitor, landed with calculated timing. Mondial Luxe announces comprehensive military appreciation program. Their PR team had worked overnight, rushing to match what was quickly becoming an industry-changing moment. James Jr. read it with a slight smile, noting the carefully crafted language. As a long-standing supporter of military families, he knew, as did everyone in the industry, that this was pure reputation management. Mondial had never shown any particular interest in veterans before. "They're scared," his chief marketing officer observed during the morning briefing. "All the luxury houses are. Your father's story has touched a nerve with consumers. They're all scrambling to prove they're not that store." The press release went on to detail Mondial's hastily assembled program. Discounts that almost exactly matched Harrison's, diversity training that echoed their initiatives, partnerships that mirrored their commitments. Even the language seemed borrowed, though lacking the personal touch that had made the Harrison program resonate. "Look at this," James Jr. showed his father, who was reviewing veterans program applications in the corner office. "They're calling it the Mondial Military Appreciation Initiative. Even the acronym is clumsy." James Sr. adjusted his reading glasses, the same ones he'd worn while being escorted from Lumineux. "Imitation is flattering, son, but authenticity can't be copied." He was right. While Mondial's press release promised sweeping changes, the Harrison program was already in action. Veterans were being hired, training programs were launching, and stores were transforming. The difference between reaction and commitment was becoming clear. Other competitors followed suit. Each announcement seemed more desperate than the last. One luxury group promised double the veterans' discount, missing the point entirely. Another launched a military-inspired fashion collection that drew immediate criticism for its tone-deaf approach. "Your father's jacket is now trending on fashion blogs," James Jr.'s social media director reported. "People are calling it the Harrison look. Dignity over flash, substance over style." The competition's scramble was having an unexpected effect. Rather than diluting the Harrison initiative's impact, it was highlighting its authenticity. Every rushed press release, every hastily announced program made the careful personal touch of the Harrison approach more apparent. Some competitors tried to spin the story negatively. "Traditional luxury values under threat," warned one industry newsletter, suggesting that opening doors too wide would dilute brand exclusivity. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Luxury for all started trending, with people sharing stories of judgment and exclusion in high-end stores. James Sr. watched it all with quiet amusement. "Reminds me of basic training," he mused. "Everyone rushing to catch up, but the ones who run too fast usually stumble." He was right again. Mondial's rushed program rollout was already facing criticism. Their veteran employees felt like props, their training seemed superficial, and their partnerships appeared transactional. The difference between following a trend and leading a change was becoming painfully clear. "Should we respond to their release?" the PR team asked during the afternoon briefing. James Jr. looked at his father, who was helping a young veteran navigate the application process for the design training program. "No need," he replied. "We're too busy actually doing the work." The industry was learning a lesson about authenticity that went beyond veterans' programs. Every luxury brand had claimed to value excellence, quality, and respect. Now they were being forced to demonstrate those values in real, measurable ways. By day's end, another dozen competitors had issued statements, launched programs, or announced initiatives. Each one referenced the unfortunate incident at Lumineux, trying to distance themselves while simultaneously copying the response. "You know what's interesting?" James Sr. said as they reviewed the day's developments. "None of them mention that the unfortunate incident was the best thing that could have happened to luxury retail." "How so?" James Jr. asked. Because now they have to prove what they claim to be. No more hiding behind fancy logos and expensive price tags. Now they have to show their true quality, not in their products, but in their character. The competitor's press release sat on James Jr.'s desk, its carefully worded promises already ringing hollow. Meanwhile, across the city, Harrison stores were filled with veterans sharing their stories, employees learning real lessons about respect, and customers witnessing the true meaning of luxury, one authentic interaction at a time. The new banner above Lumineur's entrance caught the morning light, honoring those who served in elegant gold lettering. Below it, James Sr. stood with the store's first veteran hire, a former Marine named Michael Chen, who'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan before coming home to pursue his passion for fashion design. The key, James Sr. was explaining, is to remember that every person who walks through that door has a story, just like that jacket you're wearing has a story. Michael nodded, adjusting his service jacket, now adorned with a custom Lumineux pin that identified him as both staff and veteran. Sir, I never thought I'd be working in a place like this. Fashion seemed like another world. That's exactly what we're changing, James Jr. said, joining them. He'd been overseeing the program's rollout personally, ensuring every store understood. This wasn't just about image. It was about transformation. The boutique had changed in subtle but significant ways. The same elegant displays remained, but now each store featured a discreet wall of honor, displaying photographs and stories of veteran employees and their families. The security staff, retrained under new protocols, included several veterans who brought military precision and courtesy to their roles. Victoria, who had become one of the program's most passionate advocates, was leading a morning training session. Luxury isn't about keeping people out, she told her team. Her previous hauteur replaced by genuine understanding. It's about inviting people into an experience of quality, craftsmanship, and respect. The store's clientele was changing too. Regular customers found themselves in conversations with veteran staff members about more than just fashion. A CEO learned about leadership from a former sergeant's combat experiences. A socialite discovered she shared a passion for design with a veteran who'd sketched uniforms during deployments. "Watch this," James Sr. said, nodding toward the entrance, where an elderly man in a Korean War veteran's cap hesitated at the door. Within seconds, Michael moved smoothly to welcome him, veteran to veteran. The man's apprehension melted into a smile of recognition. These moments were happening across all Harrison brands. The program wasn't just changing policies, it was changing perspectives. Luxury was becoming more than exclusive prices and prestigious labels. It was becoming inclusive excellence. James Jr. had insisted that every store's renovation include subtle tributes to service. Lumineur's iconic window displays now incorporated elements of military precision in their geometric designs. The staff uniforms featured small details inspired by dress uniforms, not as costume but as homage. "Remember when you used to help me polish my boots?" James Sr. asked his son, watching Michael guide the Korean War veteran through the store. "Same principles apply here: attention to detail, respect for the craft, pride in presentation." The banner caught the light again, drawing attention from passers-by. But it wasn't just for show. Every week, the store hosted events that brought together the fashion and military communities. Veterans shared their stories of service while learning about style and design. Fashion professionals learned about duty and honor while sharing their expertise. One of the most successful programs was Service in Style, where veteran employees helped other veterans build professional wardrobes. The transformations went beyond clothing. It was about rebuilding confidence, about belonging in spaces that had once seemed forbidden. "You know what's remarkable?" James Jr. observed, watching a young veteran explain the precision of a bespoke suit to an interested customer. "We haven't lost a single luxury client. If anything, business is up. Turns out true exclusivity isn't about keeping people out. It's about bringing the right values in. James Sr. nodded, remembering his own first uncertain steps into the store. Values like respect, dignity, excellence, the same ones we lived by in service. The banner's message had become more than words. It was a promise kept, a bridge built, a standard set. Other luxury brands had copied the program's structure, but they couldn't copy its heart. The genuine commitment to change that had started with a father's dignity and a son's determination. As evening approached, James Sr. watched another veteran family being welcomed into the store. The father wore a jacket much like his own, and his teenage daughter's eyes sparkled at the displays. But unlike his experience, they were met with genuine smiles, with respect, with understanding. "Mission accomplished?" James Jr. asked quietly. James Sr. straightened his olive jacket, the one that had started it all. "No, son. Mission continuing. That's what service is all about." The anonymous letter arrived in an expensive cream-colored envelope, the kind Lumineux once used for its VIP invitations. Inside, the message was typed in elegant serif font. "You're destroying decades of luxury tradition. Not everyone wants to shop alongside common soldiers. Either restore the old standards or watch your empire crumble." James Jr. found it on his desk that morning, placed atop the latest sales reports, which, ironically, showed significant growth across all brands since the Veterans Program launched. He was reading it for the third time when his father arrived for their weekly program review. "Hate mail?" James Sr. asked, recognizing the tight set of his son's jaw, the same expression he'd worn as a boy when standing up to schoolyard bullies. "More like a threat. From someone who knows our business." James Jr. handed over the letter. The paper, the font, even the phrasing. This came from inside the luxury industry. James Sr. read it carefully, his expression unchanging. He'd faced worse threats in Vietnam than an angry luxury retailer. "They're right about one thing," he said finally. "We are destroying their tradition, the tradition of judging people by their clothes instead of their character." But the letter wasn't isolated. Reports were coming in from across the Harrison brands. Some high-profile clients had quietly transferred their accounts to other luxury houses. A few fashion magazines had published editorials questioning whether military-friendly and luxury could truly coexist. There were whispers of a coordinated campaign to protect traditional luxury values. "They're trying to hit us where it hurts," James Jr.'s marketing director reported, creating doubt among the ultra-wealthy about whether our brands are still exclusive enough. Michael Chen, now head of veteran outreach at Lumineux, brought more concerning news. "Some of our veteran employees are getting comments from customers. Subtle things but mean-spirited, suggesting they don't belong here." James Sr. listened to it all with the calm of a man who'd weathered worse storms. "You know what we used to say in the service? The more resistance you meet, the more important your objective probably is." His son smiled, remembering similar words of wisdom during his first business challenges. But this was different. This was personal, an attack not just on their business decision, but on the values they stood for. The anonymous letter had sparked something unexpected, though. As word of the resistance spread, support for the program grew stronger. Regular customers began speaking up, defending veteran employees against snide comments. Fashion influencers posted about the dignity they witnessed in Harrison stores. Military families shared stories of feeling welcomed and respected. "Look at this," James Jr. said, pulling up a social media post from a prominent socialite. She writes, "I've bought luxury all my life, but never felt more elegant than when a veteran associate helped me understand the precision and discipline of true style." Even Victoria had faced down a former regular who'd complained about the changes. "Ma'am," she'd said, channeling James Sr.'s quiet dignity, "true luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about excellence, and our veteran employees understand that better than anyone." The opposition grew more organized. A competing luxury group launched an advertising campaign emphasizing their traditional values and exclusive heritage. Industry analysts began questioning whether Harrison Luxury Brands was diluting its premium position. James Sr. recognized the tactics. They're trying to make us doubt ourselves. Same thing the enemy used to do. Probe for weakness, look for cracks in resolve. But if anything, the resistance strengthened their commitment. James Jr. called an emergency board meeting to address the concerns head-on. He brought his father not as a symbol, but as a reminder of what they were fighting for. "They say we're destroying luxury," he told the board, the anonymous letter displayed on the screen behind him. "I say we're elevating it. True luxury was never about keeping people out. It's about celebrating excellence, craftsmanship, and dignity. Today, values that every veteran in our program exemplifies. The board's support was unanimous. The numbers helped. Sales were up, customer satisfaction had never been higher, and employee retention had improved across all brands. But it was more than that. The Harrison standard had become something bigger than a corporate initiative. As father and son left the board meeting, James Sr. adjusted his olive jacket, still his preferred attire, now almost a symbol of the change they'd created. "You know what really bothers them?" he said. "We've proved that respect and luxury aren't exclusive. That dignity isn't about designer labels. That true class has nothing to do with money." The anonymous letter sat in James Jr.'s desk drawer, a reminder that not all battles involve bullets, but all require courage to fight. The resistance they faced wasn't just about fashion or retail. It was about challenging a system that had confused exclusivity with excellence, price with value, appearance with worth. The minutes of the emergency board meeting would later be framed in James Jr.'s office, not for their corporate significance, but for the moment they captured, when luxury retail changed forever. Harrison Luxury Brands. Emergency board meeting. Minutes date. Current date. Time 9 a.m. EST. Location corporate headquarters. Manhattan present. James Harrison Jr., CEO James Harrison Sr., Special Advisor. Full board of directors, executive leadership team. James Jr. stood before the assembled board, the anonymous threat letter projected on the screen behind him. But instead of defensive explanations, he began with a story. Yesterday, a veteran named Sarah Martinez helped style the wife of a foreign diplomat in our flagship store. Sarah spent 6 years as a military logistics officer before joining us. The diplomat's wife bought twice her usual amount, then wrote to tell us why. She said it was the first time a luxury sales associate had truly listened to her needs rather than just looking at her status. The board members leaned forward, recognizing that this wasn't just another corporate presentation. This morning, Michael Chen, our veteran outreach director, prevented a 5-figure theft. He spotted the shoplifters using the same observation skills that kept his unit alive in Afghanistan. The would-be thieves were wearing designer clothes and carrying fake receipts. James Sr. sat quietly in the corner, but his presence filled the room. The board members kept glancing his way, seeing in his dignified bearing everything their brands aspired to represent. Our veteran employees have brought something priceless to our stores: integrity, discipline, attention to detail, and genuine respect for others. Yes, we've faced resistance. Yes, some traditional clients have left. But for everyone who left, we've gained 3 new ones who understand that true luxury isn't about exclusivity, it's about excellence. The sales figures appeared on screen, up 27% across all brands. Customer satisfaction, highest in company history. Employee retention improved by 40%. The numbers told their own story. Now, some in our industry want us to believe we're diluting luxury, that we're destroying tradition. James Jr. gestured to the anonymous letter. They're right. We are destroying a tradition. The tradition of mistaking price tags for worth, of confusing exclusion with excellence. The board minutes recorded what happened next in simple terms. Motion to expand Veterans Initiative across all brands and allocate additional funding. Vote unanimous in favor. But they couldn't capture the energy in the room as board members shared their own stories. One director's son had just enlisted. Another's mother had served as a nurse in Desert Storm. The traditional wall between luxury and real life was crumbling. The minutes noted special recognition. James Harrison Sr. addressed the board regarding military values and luxury retail. Synergy. What they didn't record was the power of his quiet words. Luxury without respect is just expensive emptiness. What we're doing here isn't just about veterans or fashion. It's about remembering that true quality starts with human dignity. As the meeting concluded, the industry's coordinated resistance was already faltering. The same fashion magazines that had questioned the program were now requesting exclusive coverage. Competitors who had tried to capitalize on traditional luxury were watching their market share decline. The minutes ended with a series of unanimous approvals. Expansion of veteran hiring targets, increased funding for military family support, new training programs in all stores, partnership initiatives with veterans organizations, creation of the Harrison Standard certification for luxury retail. But the real victory wasn't in the corporate decisions. It was in the way James Sr. and his son stood together afterward, looking out over Manhattan from the boardroom windows. "You know what this reminds me of?" James Sr. said, straightening his olive jacket. "The day we finally got your mother's cancer diagnosis. The doctors laid out all the challenges, all the reasons to be afraid, and she just said, 'Well, we better get started then.'" James Jr. nodded, remembering her courage. "She would have loved seeing you in that boardroom today. She would have loved seeing her son stand up for what's right," his father corrected. "The luxury isn't in the clothes or the stores, son. It's in the courage to change things that need changing." The board minutes, with their formal language and corporate jargon, couldn't capture that moment. But they recorded the day when a father's dignity and a son's determination transformed an industry's understanding of true luxury. The grand reopening invitation was elegantly simple, printed on thick cream cardstock with gold lettering. Harrison Luxury Brands invites you to celebrate the renewal of Lumino Fashion House, where dignity meets excellence, special honors, celebrating our veterans, RSVP required. The guest list broke every rule of traditional luxury retail, alongside celebrities. And fashion icons were veterans from every era, their families, and military service organizations. The press called it the most diverse luxury event in retail history. James Sr. stood at the entrance, no longer an unwelcome visitor, but an honored host. He wore his olive jacket, now something of a legend in the fashion world, with the same quiet dignity he'd shown that first difficult day. Beside him, James Jr. greeted each guest personally, from movie stars to retired sergeants. Victoria, transformed from that first confrontation, coordinated the event with military precision, learned from her veteran colleagues. "Mr. Harrison," she said to James Sr., "would you like to review the honor guard arrangement?" The store had been subtly transformed. Display cases now featured photos and stories of veteran employees alongside luxury items. The security team, led by Michael Chen, included former service members who brought military courtesy to their roles. Even the music was carefully chosen, a string quartet of veteran musicians. "Remember when they couldn't wait to throw me out?" James Sr. murmured to his son as another wave of guests arrived. "Now look at this." The crowd was remarkable in its contrast. Fashion editors chatting with retired Marines, socialites learning about service from veteran staff, celebrities being schooled in real courage by Purple Heart recipients. The barriers of exclusivity had been replaced by bridges of respect. Emma, James Sr.'s granddaughter, wore the vintage locket that had started it all, the one her grandfather had tried to buy that fateful day. She moved through the crowd, collecting stories for her social media channel, showing how younger generations could bridge the worlds of fashion and service. "Grandpa," she said, hugging James Sr., "you're trending again. People love your jacket." The fashion world had indeed embraced the Harrison look, not just the olive jacket, but what it represented. Major designers were collaborating with veteran artists. Military precision and attention to detail were the new luxury buzzwords. But it went deeper than fashion. A young veteran recently hired as a design apprentice approached James Sr. with tears in her eyes. "Sir, before this program, I didn't think there was a place for me in civilian life. Now I'm designing accessories for people who used to intimidate me." The ceremony itself was brief, but powerful. James Jr. spoke about transformation, not just of a store, but of an industry's values. Victoria publicly apologized for her past behavior, then announced a new training program she'd developed with veteran staff to ensure it never happened again. But the most powerful moment came when James Sr. addressed the crowd. He hadn't planned to speak, but something moved him to take the microphone. In Vietnam, we learned that the uniform doesn't make the soldier. The soldier's dignity makes the uniform. Today, we're learning that the clothes don't make the person. The person's character makes the clothes. True luxury isn't about what you wear. It's about how you treat others. The applause was thunderous. Fashion journalists wiped away tears, their usual cynicism forgotten. Veteran guests stood straighter, finally feeling truly welcomed in a world that had often seemed closed to them. As the evening progressed, the store hummed with energy. Veterans shared war stories while discussing fabric choices. Fashion experts learned about courage while exploring design possibilities. The artificial barriers between luxury and reality dissolved in real human connection. The event peaked when a group of veteran employees unveiled a permanent installation, a wall of honor featuring service members' stories alongside the luxury items they now helped create and sell. It stood as a testament to the program's success and a reminder of its purpose. James Jr. found his father standing quietly by the window display where it had all started. "Thinking about that first day?" "Thinking about your mother," James Sr. replied. "She always said luxury wasn't about showing off. It was about lifting up. You've proved her right." The reopening celebration continued into the evening, but its impact would last much longer. It wasn't just a store that had been transformed. It was an entire industry's understanding of what luxury could mean. As the last guests departed, James Sr. straightened his jacket one final time. The same jacket that had once marked him as unwelcome now stood as a symbol of change. True luxury, they had all learned, wasn't about keeping people out. It was about recognizing the dignity in every person who walked through the door. The thank you letters arrived daily now, each one carefully preserved in a leather-bound album on James Sr.'s desk. Not in the corporate office, he still preferred his modest apartment, but in the small study where he'd once helped his son with homework. Today, father and son sat together reading the latest arrivals. "Dear Mr. Harrison," James Jr. read aloud, "before your program, I was just another struggling veteran with PTSD. Fashion seemed like another world. Now I'm a senior designer at Lumineux, creating accessories that help other veterans transition to civilian life. You didn't just give me a job, you gave me back my pride." James Sr. picked up another letter. "Your program saved my marriage," he read quietly. "After 3 tours in Iraq, I couldn't find work that felt meaningful. Now I manage the Harrison standard certification process, teaching luxury brands how to truly respect service. My wife says she has her husband back." The letters kept coming, each telling a story of transformation. A former Marine who now trained security teams across all Harrison brands, bringing military precision to customer service. A Navy veteran whose experience in logistics had revolutionized the company's supply chain. An Army nurse who'd become one of their top personal shoppers, using her emotional intelligence to truly understand clients' needs. "Look at this one," James Sr. said, holding up a letter written in careful schoolroom handwriting. From a 10-year-old girl. Thank you for helping my mommy find a job where people respect her uniform. Now she can come to my school events looking fancy. Victoria had written too, her letter among the first in the album. You taught me that true luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about excellence. Every time I train new staff now, I tell them about the day I learned what real dignity looks like. The impact rippled beyond retail. Other industries were adopting the Harrison standard. Law firms, banks, tech companies, all implementing programs to recruit and support veterans. The letters told those stories too. Your program inspired us to start our own veterans initiative. We used your training manual as a template. Your father's story changed how we think about hiring. James Jr. paused at a particularly thick envelope. Inside was a collection of photos, veterans in their new roles, helping customers, designing products, managing teams. Each face showed the same quiet pride James Sr. had maintained that first difficult day. Remember what Mom used to say? James Jr. asked, showing his father a photo of a veteran teaching a design class. The greatest luxury is helping others. Rise. James Sr. nodded, straightening a stack of new letters. Some were tear-stained, others typed with formal military precision, each telling a story of barriers broken and dignity restored. One letter was different, from a wealthy regular client who'd initially threatened to leave when the program started. I was wrong. Shopping with people who understand real values has shown me what true luxury means. Yesterday, a veteran sales associate spent an hour helping an elderly woman find the perfect scarf for her husband's funeral. He treated her with more respect than I've ever seen in 30 years of luxury retail. The letters weren't just feel-good stories. They were metrics of real change. Veteran unemployment in the luxury retail sector down 60%, military family participation in fashion industry training up 300%. Customer satisfaction scores highest in the industry. Employee retention rates setting new records, but the numbers couldn't capture the human impact. Each letter represented a life changed, a barrier broken, a bridge built between worlds that had seemed impossibly far apart. This one's special, James Sr. said, carefully unfolding a letter worn from multiple readings. It was from Michael Chen. Sir, when I first met you, I thought luxury retail was about keeping people like us out. You showed me it's about letting everyone's best qualities shine. Now, when I train new veteran hires, I tell them your story. But mostly I show them your jacket, still the most luxurious thing in our store, because it carries real dignity. As evening fell over Manhattan, father and son continued reading letters together. Outside, the city rushed by, but in this quiet room, transformation was measured in words of gratitude, in stories of renewal, in testament after testament to the power of respect. We should probably head home, James Jr. said finally, but his father was already opening another letter, his weathered hands gentle with the paper, his eyes bright with purpose. Some luxuries they had learned were worth taking time to appreciate. The foundation document lay open on the conference table, its formal legal language outlining something far more meaningful than typical corporate philanthropy. The Veterans in Fashion Initiative Foundation mission to transform the luxury retail industry through veteran integration, creating pathways for service members to build meaningful careers while elevating standards of excellence and respect across all sectors. James Jr. had insisted on having his father co-author every word. The document wasn't just establishing another corporate foundation, it was codifying the lessons of that transformative day into lasting change. Look at this section, James Sr. said, pointing to a paragraph he'd helped craft. All participating brands must maintain a minimum 15% veteran employment rate across all levels, from sales floor to executive suite. The foundation's scope went far beyond their own company. It would provide grants to other luxury brands implementing veteran programs, fund design school scholarships for military families, and establish training centers in military communities. "We're starting with 5 cities," James Jr. explained, to the inaugural board, which included veteran leaders alongside fashion executives. Each center will offer everything from retail skills to design training, all taught by veteran professionals. Michael Chen, now the Foundation's first executive director, presented the expansion plans. "We're calling it Operation Transform. Phase 1 targets luxury retail. Phase 2 expands to adjacent industries, cosmetics, hospitality, high-end automotive. By Phase 3, we'll be reshaping corporate culture across all premium sectors." The document detailed innovative programs, battles to boutiques, transitioning combat leadership skills to retail management, design core, matching veteran artists with leading fashion houses, service to style, teaching luxury customer, service through military precision, honor in fashion, documenting veteran success stories in luxury retail. Victoria, who'd helped develop the training protocols, explained her contribution. "Every participating brand will learn what we learned. That true luxury is about respect, dignity, and excellence. The same values our veterans exemplify." James Sr. watched it all with quiet pride. The Foundation was taking everything they'd discovered and scaling it nationally. His simple act of entering a boutique to buy his granddaughter a locket had sparked a movement. "We've already had interest from London, Paris, and Milan," James Jr. reported. "They've seen how our veteran employees have transformed the customer experience. They want to replicate our success." The Foundation document included a special section titled The Harrison Standard, a formal certification process for luxury brands committed to veteran integration. The requirements were rigorous: comprehensive veteran hiring programs, military family support initiatives, ongoing training and advancement opportunities, regular cultural competency assessments, community engagement requirements. "This isn't just about jobs," James Sr. reminded them. "It's about bridging worlds that never should have been separated. Every veteran who succeeds in luxury retail helps break down barriers for others." The funding structure was equally thoughtful. Beyond the initial Harrison family endowment, participating brands would contribute a percentage of profits to sustain and expand programs. Success would fuel further success. Emma, now heading the Foundation's social media presence, shared the latest metrics. "We're seeing unprecedented engagement. Young people especially love seeing veterans succeed in fashion. It's changing perceptions of both military service and luxury retail." The document's final section looked forward, outlining a 10-year vision. Veteran employment in luxury retail normalized across all brands. Military leadership principles integrated into industry standards. Design schools actively recruiting from military communities. Luxury retail recognized as a premier veteran career path. "Your mother," James Sr. said to his son during a quiet moment, "she always said you'd do something special with your success." "But I don't think even she imagined this." James Jr. smiled, remembering her wisdom. "She also said true luxury is about lifting others up. That's exactly what this foundation will do." The document concluded with a simple statement of purpose: to ensure that no veteran ever again feels unwelcome in spaces where their values of excellence, dignity, and service should make them most at home. As father and son reviewed the final draft together, they could see how far they'd come from that difficult day in the boutique. The Foundation would ensure that such incidents never happened again, not by avoiding them, but by transforming the entire culture that made them possible. "Ready to sign?" James Jr. asked his father. James Sr. straightened his olive jacket, still his signature look, now almost iconic in the fashion world, and picked up the pen. Some signatures were about more than just ink on paper. Some, like this one, were about ensuring that dignity and respect became as much a part of luxury as fine fabrics and elegant designs. 1 year to the day after James Sr. first walked into Lumineux Fashion House, 3 generations of Harrisons gathered for a family portrait. The setting was deliberately chosen. The same boutique that had once turned him away now served as a symbol of transformation. Emma wore her grandmother's locket, the vintage piece that had started it all, paired with a design from the boutique's new veteran-inspired collection. James Jr. stood tall in one of his signature suits, but with a subtle olive green pocket square honoring his father. And James Sr., of course, wore his famous jacket, now considered iconic in fashion circles. "If your mother could see this," James Sr. said quietly as the photographer set up. The boutique had changed so much in a year. Veterans worked the sales floor with military precision and warmth. The Wall of Honor displayed photographs and stories of service members who'd found new purpose in luxury retail. Even the security team, led by Michael Chen, brought a special dignity to their roles. Victoria, now the National Training Director for the Veterans in Fashion Initiative, approached with a small package. "Mr. Harrison, we found something you should see." Inside was the original security footage from that first day, preserved as a teaching tool for new employees. "Hard to believe that was only a year ago," James Jr. remarked, watching the grainy images of his father being escorted out. "Look how much has changed." The numbers told part of the story. Over 1,000 veterans hired across Harrison brands, customer satisfaction at record highs. The Foundation's training centers opening in 3 cities, dozens of luxury brands adopting. The Harrison Standard Military Family Scholarship Program fully subscribed, but the real change was visible in the small moments happening around them as they prepared for the portrait. A veteran sales associate helping a client with the same attention to detail he'd once given to military protocols. A former Marine teaching new employees about the precision of proper garment care. A military spouse showcasing her debut design collection in the window. "Grandpa," Emma said, adjusting her locket, "tell me again about the day you came to buy this." James Sr. smiled, sharing a look with his son. "I thought I was just buying a birthday gift. Turned out I was starting a revolution." The photographer positioned them carefully, suggesting they face the window where the locket had first caught James Sr.'s eye. Through the glass, they could see the new store banner, "Where service meets style, the Harrison Standard." "One more detail," Victoria said, bringing forward a framed piece of paper. It was the original store policy manual, preserved behind glass as a reminder of how far they'd come. Beside it hung its modern replacement, with the Harrison Standard prominently featured. As the photographer worked, clients and staff paused to watch. Many recognized James Sr. His story had become legend in luxury retail, but they weren't seeing him as the veteran who'd been turned away. They saw him as the man who'd helped transform an industry's understanding of true value. "Mr. Harrison," Michael called from the door, "the new veteran training class is here. Would you mind saying a few words after the photo?" James Sr. nodded. These moments with new recruits were his favorite part of the Foundation's work. He loved seeing the hope in their eyes, the pride in their bearing, the recognition that their service was valued here. "Perfect," the photographer said, capturing the final shot. 3 generations of Harrisons, standing tall in the space that had sparked their legacy of change. Later, when the portrait was hung in the boutique's entrance, visitors would note how it captured something beyond just family resemblance. They saw the dignity in James Sr.'s bearing, the purposeful determination in James Jr.'s stance, the bright future in Emma's smile. They saw the past, present, and future of luxury retail's transformation. "Your mother," James Sr. said to his son as they prepared to meet the new trainees, "she always said luxury wasn't about what you had, but about what you gave. I think we finally proved her right." James Jr. straightened his father's jacket collar, a gesture of love, respect, and shared purpose. "No, Dad, you proved her right. The rest of us just followed your lead." The boutique hummed with energy. Around them, veterans and civilians working side by side, each bringing their unique strengths to create something new. The old barriers between luxury and service, between exclusivity and excellence, had crumbled. In their place stood a new standard of dignity, respect, and purpose. Emma touched her locket, now a symbol of more than just a birthday gift. "We should make this an annual tradition," she suggested. "A family portrait here every year to remember how it all began." As they moved to greet the new trainees, James Sr. paused for one last look at the portrait setting. The same windows that had once reflected his rejection now showed a different image. 3 generations standing tall, surrounded by the change they'd created, ready to carry their legacy of transformation into the future. True luxury, they had all learned, wasn't about keeping people out. It was about recognizing the dignity in every person who walked through the door, about transforming exclusivity into excellence, about proving that the greatest style comes from serving others. And it had all started with a veteran in an olive jacket, standing tall in the face of rejection, unknowingly about to change an industry forever.